Just like we all thought, the Buccaneers go wide receiver in the first round. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this live episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Right now, you're going to get picks tipped because I'll find out before it gets announced on TV. So if you want that, become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. I see all of you in the chat. I appreciate all of you. You guys are the best. Don't worry, Demon Hunter. I will get to potential picks on day 2. I'm going to get to where does this pick fit into everything. But first, let's talk about the pick. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selected Ohio State wide receiver Emeka Egbuka with the 19th pick. They had their choice of a lot of defensive talent: Jahdae Barron, Jahad Campbell, Mike Green, Donovan Ezeraku, but they go with the receiver who was one of the best in college football at one of the top programs in the nation over the last 3 years. For his career, 205 receptions, over 2,800 yards, 24 touchdowns. Egbuka runs a 4.48 40 with a nearly 40-inch vertical and has a drop rate of just 5.8%. Think about for a second all of the great receivers to come out of Ohio State: Chris Olave, Joey Galloway, Chris Carter, Michael Thomas, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith-Njigba, Michael Jenkins, David Boston, Santonio Holmes, Garrett Wilson. Emeka Egbuka is the school's all-time leading receiver. Long story short, he's a faster version of Chris Godwin. He's sure-handed. He can line up inside and outside. He's not scared of contact, and he's going to make the catch. Look, I'm as stunned as anybody that the Bucs didn't take a defensive player. Shocked. I was speechless for a solid 2-3 minutes. But this pick also isn't out of left field. Think back over the past couple of months. Todd Bowles told us at the Combine, when he was asked what positions he was looking at, he flat out said receiver without hesitation. He told us again that he wasn't going to sacrifice offensive talent for defensive needs. The Bucs had their board, and Egbuka was the guy that they wanted to add to the offense. And here's the other thing. Last year, you all saw what happened when Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Jalen McMillan all were down. We knew that receiver was a position they were likely going to address in this draft. We all just thought it was going to be later. I mean, the last episode that I did, I was talking about a couple of day 2 and then day 3 receivers. Instead, the Bucs looked at the talent of receiver versus those defensive positions, and they decided that Egbuka was better than the receivers they could get Friday or Saturday compared to the talent at corner, edge, safety, and linebacker. I know people are shocked. Some people are upset. I have gotten a lot of messages from listeners and viewers of the show that are furious. But I will say this. We have all talked about trusting Jason Licht and his draft prowess. And you know what? No GM in the league has been more successful at nailing their picks than Jason Licht. I texted this to the insiders early on Thursday. There is no team that has more snaps or games played by players taken in rounds 1 through 5 since 2014 than the Buccaneers. So if we're going to talk about trusting Jason, you can't throw that out the window the moment he does something that you don't agree with or you don't like. Would I have made the pick? No. But I am also not the GM of the Buccaneers either. This is the other thing that I was saying about this draft. So many of these players are clumped so close together that it's hard to figure out who is actually going to go where. Jalen Walker was a consensus top 10 pick, and he fell into the teens to the Atlanta Falcons. The Cowboys drafted a guard that was viewed as a day 2 pick. This is where the unpredictability of this draft comes in. So what does Egbuka bring to the team? Elite route running, elite hands, top-end ability to track the deep ball, which the Bucs have been sorely lacking over the course of the last few seasons. He's probably the best receiver in the class at shaking off defenders and getting himself open. He straight up manipulates guys in order to get into open space. This is a player that has been talked about as a first-round talent since 2022, and the Bucs just made him part of what is now, to me, the single most dangerous receiving core in the league. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But what's something else that I talked about constantly in regards to receivers that the Buccaneers should target? I kept talking about my dude from Illinois, Pat Bryant. Why did I like him so much other than the fact that he was a clutch receiver? He was reliable. He blocks. No block, no rock. Egbuka is phenomenal at run blocking. Absolutely fantastic. All the success that these Ohio State running backs have had, large part of that is not only the offensive line, but it's been Egbuka and some of these other receivers blocking down the field for them. That is a requirement. If you want to be a receiver at Ohio State, you have to be able to get grimy and get nasty in the run game. And that's exactly what Egbuka does. So, I'm going to jump into the chat here in just a second. But, once the shock and the surprise wore off, this pick made sense. We knew receiver was going to be a position that the Bucs addressed. None of us believed it was going to be in the first round, despite some of these mock drafts where we saw Golden being taken or Ted McMillan being taken. But when you look at the talent drop-off from guys like McMillan and Egbuka and Golden to the guys on day 2 versus guys like, Mike Green, who fell to the second round, Will Johnson, who fell to the second round. Nick Emenwari was talked about as a first-round talent. He's in the second round. The talent drop-off at receiver from those top guys to what they could get on the next couple of days, that was a more significant drop. The Bucs want to continue to score points, and they just added one of the most prolific college programs, all-time leading receiver, to a wide receiver room that already has a first-ballot Hall of Famer, one of the most consistent and best slot receivers in the NFL, and an emerging second-year wide receiver that they took from Washington. That's pretty freaking dangerous. Let's jump into the chat real quick and see what some of you guys are saying. We got Reginald in the chat. It says it is a deep defense class. It absolutely is. 100%. And that's something that was taken into account when they built their board. Now, some of the comments that Jason Light made kind of sounded like, Kevin Costner out of draft day. I think JC Allen tweeted it, that it was Emeka Egbuka no matter what. There was a lot of excitement around this pick from Jason and Todd and some of the people inside that building. Matt says, what did Yarcho Jr. think? He was as confused as everybody else, but he's kind of like me in the fact that he can compartmentalize. And once college is over, I don't care where they went to college. Once they reach the NFL, college is it's whatever. It doesn't matter anymore. So, the worst part about this is when I bring you guys my Egbuka film review, I have to sit down and watch multiple Ohio State games. So that's going to bother me. But, he goes from being a Buck to being a Buck. It is what it is. We got G Vegas. G Vegas. I love this. He says the only bad thing about this pick is that we will have to get another OC next year because Grizz will get a head coaching job. If he does, good for him. It just continues to mean that the Bucs are making the right decisions and selecting their offensive coordinators. But this offense is going to be absolutely electric. So where does Egbuka fit into this offense? That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature helps you write job descriptions and then quickly gets your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. If you add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture, you can double your reach to qualified candidates. There's no wonder that 72% of small businesses say that LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. So, in an offense where the Buccaneers already have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, Bucky Irving, Rashad White, and Cade Otton, and there's only one ball to go around, where does Egbuka fit in? Right out of the gate, to me, he's the wide receiver 4, but he's not going to stay there. We all love Jalen McMillan. J-Mac was awesome down the stretch, but Egbuka is a better receiver. Jason Light told the media after the pick that this wasn't just a pick for the future, it was also a pick for the present. Think back to the Super Bowl offense and all the playmakers that the Bucs had back then. You had Mike Evans, you had Chris Godwin, you had Antonio Brown, you had Scotty Miller, you had Gronk, you had Brady, you had Fournette, you had Rojo. There was only one ball to go around then too. This is an offense now that is going to have a mismatch on every single play. There isn't a defense out there that can defend all of these players at once. So Egbuka is going to be the guy that can come in relief for any of the top 3 receivers and play any role early on in the season. It also means, to me, the Bucs are going to run a ton of 4 receiver sets this season and spread those defenses out. That's not just going to open things up for the receivers to get into plus matchups with their one-on-one opportunities, but it's also going to open up the field for Bucky Irving to do Bucky Irving things. And that goes back to how good of a run blocker Egbuka is. Really, bringing in Egbuka hurts Trey Palmer, Rakim Jarrett, and Sterling Shepard. Shep was slotted in as the wide receiver 4. He just got demoted. There's not a debate about this. I like Shep. I know a lot of you like Shep. I saw someone in the chat saying, I don't understand the hate for Shepard. I don't hate on Shepard. He came in, when the Bucs needed him last year, and he stepped up and he did a good job. But he still had his issues. He still had bad drops in pivotal moments. He's an aging receiver that is nothing more than a rotational guy. Palmer and Jarrett, they're about to battle for a roster spot. I can't fault the Bucs for wanting to make sure that no matter what, whether this team is fully healthy or they're pieced together with duct tape and a prayer like they were last year, that they have so much talent and depth at receiver that the offense can operate like normal on any given week in any given situation. And no, this, for those curious, this is not a commentary on Godwin's recovery, which, Light said at his presser that Godwin's recovery is on schedule. It's also not a commentary. This is something else I saw floated around on Twitter. Had a couple of insiders text and ask, had a couple of other people reach out. Is this about Mike Evans being in a contract year? Is this about Mike Evans, this being his last year? No, it's not. It is, however, a point in time that no one really wants to admit is coming. And that is that Mike Evans truly doesn't have much time left in the league. As long as he wants to play, Light is going to try to make sure that he stays a Buck, and he is a wire-to-wire Buccaneer for the entire duration of his career. But Egbuka and McMillan are the future 1 and 2 guys for this team. And now they get to sit in a room, they get to study film, they get to work at practice, they get to absorb all the information that they can from a first ballot Hall of Famer and arguably somebody else that could wind up in the Hall of Fame. At the very least, he's going to wind up in the Ring of Honor. Baker, I can absolutely promise you, is thrilled about this pick. Mike, Chris, Jalen, they are loving this. The Bucs already had one of the top offenses in the league. They had a top 5 passing offense. They had a top 5 rushing offense. They had one of the best scoring offenses, and it just got better. Going to jump into the chat real quick. We already have a bold prediction dropping. Where did that just go? Richard in the chat. Bold prediction. Egbuka will score his first touchdown as a returner. That's something else that Egbuka could wind up doing for this team. I've been saying it for the last couple of months. Palmer isn't it. Palmer's not that dude. I like him. He's a great guy, but he's not that dude on the field. And the Bucs are going to look somewhere to replace him as a returner. You also have to replace Bucky Irving as a returner. He handled quite a few kick returns last year, along with Sean Tucker with the double return formation. Is Egbuka going to be that guy? He could be. That could be one way to get himself on the field early in the season as he starts to become more and more incorporated in this offense. But for as much as we all want defensive talent, for as much as we want the Bucs to address corner and address safety and address edge and address linebacker, this is not a pick to take lightly. This is not a pick to shrug off or get upset about, because what Egbuka can do for this offense opens up so many different avenues for not just himself, but for the other playmakers on this team. Chris Godwin is going to get more open looks. Jalen McMillan is going to get more open looks. Mike is still going to command a double team, which means Egbuka is going to get one-on-one looks that he's going to take advantage of, because the way he just dark magic hypnotizes whoever is in front of him and gets himself into open space and makes plays. Narav, I didn't see this. Good heads up here if it'll pop up. Egbuka said he's friends with J-Mac already, should fit in quickly. I love that. Absolutely love that. Demon Hunter with another bold prediction. I'm loving these. Egbuka gets his first touchdown, showing he can play two-way ball and get an interception for a touchdown. We're talking about Emeka Egbuka, not Travis Hunter, who Jacksonville paid way too much money in terms of draft capital to go up and get Travis Hunter. But hey, Duval. Yeah, I'm making fun of Liam Cohen. It is what it is. Saw somebody, Billy Perez. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Are we trading for Ramsey then? No, absolutely not. The Bucs are not trading for Ramsey. They are not paying an aging and declining Jalen Ramsey the amount of guaranteed money that he is going to get this year, when there's still a ton of cornerback talent available. And I am going to get to that. Top prospects available in day 2. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for your chance to win big. I almost won big yesterday. All I needed to finish my 14-leg parlay was one Derek White block. One. And he didn't get it. It's unfortunate. Right now, the Oklahoma City Thunder are the favorites to win the NBA Finals at plus 170, followed by the defending champion Boston Celtics at plus 190, the Cleveland Cavaliers at plus 490, and the Los Angeles Lakers at plus 2100. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com to claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Wrapping things up here on a live post first round edition of Locked On Bucs. Now, I know I've said this before, and I'm probably quick story time. I texted the insiders. Again, if you're not an insider, you should become one. We have a lot of fun. But I texted the insiders. Bengals on the clock. This was at 9:53 p.m. Players still available we've talked about being fits for the Bucs. Jahad Campbell, Jahdae Barron, Mike Green, Donovan Ezeraku, James Pierce, Malachi Starks, Will Johnson, which means they'll take Matthew Golden for no apparent reason. I was so close. Guys, making a joke and ended up being right. But I cannot fathom a world where the Bucs go into the second round and end up doubling up on offense. So we looked at defense on day 2, and it's a lot of the players that I've been talking about for the last few months. Benjamin Morrison, who by all accounts looked fantastic in his individual pro day at his high school in Arizona. He looked fluid. The hips were moving well. He had some, he was starting to get his speed back. He was able to turn and move the way he needs to. Looks like he's checking out just fine. Xavier Watts, Siobhan Revelle, Demetrius Knight. But now we've seen Mike Green, Donovan Ezeraku, Will Johnson all slide down the boards. In the case of Will Johnson, it's a medical concern. He has a knee issue that has teams a little worried. I've spoken my piece on Will Johnson. I don't really care for him much as a prospect, but, he has every opportunity to look like the Will Johnson that went out there and helped Michigan win a national championship. But yeah, he does have some knee issues that have people a little worried. Jahad Campbell, same thing. You have the shoulder concern that he might end up on the PUP list to start the season, plus positional value. The off-ball linebacker is not a popular first-round pick. And then Mike Green, you have the character concern. So the plan is still the same. Best player available at a position of need. Jason Light talked about how he liked the depth among their edge rushers, but that they're willing to add to it. So you still have an option out there like Oladejo from UCLA or Jared Ivey or another Buckeye in Jack Sawyer that you can get in the third round. You still have options at safety with Xavier Watts and Nick Emenwari and, it's escaping me now, Andrew Makuba. Those are the kinds of guys. Corner, same thing. You still have Kobe Bryant that you can land in the fourth round. The Bucs are still sitting pretty for day 2 with all of the talent that is still out there and the ability to move at a much cheaper price. The Jags gave up a ton to move up 3 spots. The Falcons gave up next year's first in order to move back into the first round to get James Pierce. Tomorrow, it's going to cost a fraction of that. So while I know a lot of you are disappointed and a lot of you are frustrated, what did I tell you all over and over and over and over throughout this entire process? Do not get down if the Bucs don't take your guy or if they don't take a certain position on night 1. It's about the collective. Are you still, for those of you that are upset or disappointed, and you can say it in the live chat if you're one of those people, you can leave it in the YouTube comments, you can tweet me. Are you still going to be disappointed if I come on and do this live show Friday night after the second and third rounds and the Bucs have Egbuka, Benjamin Morrison, and Oladejo? Are you going to be disappointed if the Bucs have Egbuka, Nick Scourton, and Andrew Makuba? Just let it play out and see what Jason Light has up his sleeve next. Let the man cook. He's made some pretty damn good meals for the better part of the last decade. So just let him do his thing. Let him trust his scouts and trust the process. Corey in the chat says Za Frazier on day 2. I like Za. I do. And he's a guy, he's one of those in between guys for me where he could end up slipping into the 4th. But again, this is what's so crazy about this draft is that guys that we thought would go in the 4th could be in the first 5 picks tomorrow. And then guys that we thought were top 10 picks were slipping down to the late teens and into the 20s. Guys that we thought were for sure first rounders have fallen into the 2nd round. The talent is so deep and so clustered that's what makes this draft unpredictable. It's not the trades. Even though the Jacksonville trade was wild and nobody really saw that coming until the last hour leading up to the draft, but it's not the trades that are going to make this draft. It's the names that we're going to hear that we perceive differently than the GMs and the scouts. Matt in the chat says, bold prediction, Egbuka, 500 yards, 5 touchdowns. They'll take that. They will take that all day long. 500 yards and 5 touchdowns to add to what Mike and Chris and Jalen are going to do, plus what Bucky's doing. Shut it down, man. Demon Hunter says, Atlanta looking very scary now. They had some good picks. You guys know my feelings on Jalen Walker. I didn't really know where he fit. Was he an edge? Was he an inside linebacker? How is he going to look? But then trading up for James Pierce and adding the 2 of those guys, that is going to be tough. But all Baker needs is 2 seconds. Give him 2 seconds. Dump off the ball to Godwin. Dump it off to McMillan. Dump it off to Egbuka. Dump it off to Bucky. This offense is going to click, guys. This offense is going to click. I'm telling you. Let's see. We got Frank says Bucks need to run a 5 receiver set. Oh, they will. They will. At this point, the 4 receiver set's going to be just their standard set. Let's see. We got who else? Everybody keeps saying Egg Mac. I'm not sure who Egg Mac is. T-Gat Relic says, I think they go safety or corner next. I think that's a pretty safe bet. And again, a lot of the top, we had one safety go. Malachi Starks, the number 1 safety in the class, win in the 1st round of Baltimore. Jihad Campbell. I was talking about Jihad Campbell. He went to the Eagles. So the Eagles continue to do Eagles things. But yeah, you still have Xavier Watts. You still have Nick Emenwari. You still have Andrew Makuba. You still have Lathan Ransom out of Ohio State. The Bucs they've drafted 4 Ohio State players in franchise history. And I believe Egbuka is the first one since Will Allen back in, was that like 2011, 2012? The Bucs could end up with 3 Buckeyes out of this class if they add Captain Jack Sawyer and then Lathan Ransom. It's not a bad thing to add 3 national champions to your team when you're trying to get to a Super Bowl. I'm just saying. Richard, in response to Atlanta's edition, says, Bucs still have Wirfs and Luke. We're good. You right. They're good. Billy says, going to need a 50 burger every Sunday. They're not. They're still going to make additions. There are still starting caliber defenders available on day 2. I just rattled off a bunch. They are going to be able to take a corner or a safety or a linebacker or an edge rusher in the 2nd round that is an immediate impact player. The edge probably won't start, but they'll be in the rotation. There was the possibility if the Bucs had taken Donovan Ezeraku at 19, he wasn't going to start either. He was going to rotate in with Hassan Reddick and Yaya Diaby. But Benjamin Morrison, Siobhan Revel, Darian Porter, even if it's Will Johnson, who's not my cup of tea, those are starting corners. Xavier Watts, Andrew Makuba, Nick Emenwari, those are starting safeties. You can still go out and get Chris Paul Jr. or Demetrius Knight or Jeffrey Bassa. Those are starting linebackers. So, yeah, don't worry. The Bucs do not have to score 50 points a game in order to win games. They are going to add to the defense. Remember, It's about the collective. Last one real quick. Justin in the chat, odds of trade up versus staying where we are. I would say it's more likely that the Bucs stay where they are. They were working the phones. They were trying to move back, according to Ian Rappaport, and either they didn't get a deal that they liked that, gave them the confidence to sacrifice Egbuka, or they just decided to stay pat. But I think it depends on the board. That's really what it boils down to. We saw the run of edge rushers and trenches in the first round. What is the positional run going to be in the second round? Are we going to see a run on the secondary where these guys start to get picked off one by one and Jason says, okay, we only have 2 of these guys left, with a day 2 grade. We need to make a move to go get one. Or, again, they had themselves in a perfect position to just let the draft come to them. Don't give up future capital. Don't force anything. Just take best player available. Richard, Will Allen, 2005. Yeah, probably, now that I think about it, because I met him. He was working a charity event at a restaurant that I worked in. And I mentioned to my wife at the time, we had only been dating for a couple of months. And this was 2008. And I pointed to him. I said, that's Will Allen. He's the safety for the Buccaneers. And she beeline right for him, went up to him and pointed to me and told him, that I was a big Bucs fan. And he walked right over, shook my hand. Super, super nice guy. Not great at playing safety in the NFL, but he was a super nice and cordial guy and was really cool. So yeah, you're right. It would have been 2005. All right. I am going to do one more. All right. 2 more. Richard says, so we're drafting Scattaboo second round. Yes, 100%. That is absolutely going to happen. I hope it does. That would be amazing. Let's see. Game On says, Jason is not taking an edge because he still likes Ramirez. I almost died when I heard the press conference. He does like the depth. And I know for a fact the Bucs have been high on Ramirez and Watts since they joined the team, but take comments like that with a grain of salt, because you can sit there and tell yourself all day long, yeah, we're absolutely happy with Ramirez and Watts and the depth that they provide us. But if you have somebody that falls in your lap that's even better, you're not going to ignore that. They just proved that with the first round pick. The Bucs were good at receiver. We knew they probably needed to add one. They didn't need to add one in the first round, but they did it to make the team better. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. I would say that there's probably there's a very high likelihood that they still take an edge rusher in this draft, but I am siding with a lot of you in the chat. I do think the second round is probably going to be secondary, but again, we're going to have to see how the board falls. But when it's all said and done, after the Bucs pick in the third round, we're going to go live again. So make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube with those notifications turned on so that you know when we go live, as well as wherever you get your podcast. Thank you all so much. I know it's late. We're live technically Friday morning, but tons of you in the live show, tons of you in the live chat. I appreciate each and every one of you so very much. So yeah, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcast. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Bucs or click the link in the show notes. And congratulations to Emeka Egbuka for becoming a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. If you haven't seen it, check out the video from his draft party. You will not see a guy who is more excited. He was literally screaming. He's so excited to join this team. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for Baker. I'm happy for the offense. This is going to be a lot of fun, but we're going to be back tomorrow night live. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.